You're listening to the Jersey Guys Podcast, the show that talks about hard rock, heavy metal, AOR, and West Coast music. In-depth conversation and special guests are always on tap, so settle in and turn it up. Now, here are your hosts, Tom and Mark.
Hey everybody, this is Mark Ballo from the Jersey Guys Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Tom Coyne, and today we've got special guest Randy Jackson from the band Zebra. So let's get right into it. Let's go back to way before Zebra and talk about the early days of your career. And I understand that in the 1960s you saw the Beatles. Was that what made you want to be a musician?
Yeah, I mean that was my first concert. In 1964, I had gotten a record of 45 from a friend of mine that lived down the block. Her name was Linda Rosenbaum. She came to my front door and had this 45 of I Want to Hold Your Hand, and saw her standing there. And she said, "This is the Beatles. You got to listen to it." And I'd never heard of the Beatles. And I put it on, and I couldn't really understand it. You know, believe it or not, I couldn't get the beat, but I liked what I was hearing. But it was just it wasn't like listening to the theme song to Huckleberry Hound. It was something. And the Beatles came out with another album. We got their first record, and I got their second record, and so we had a lot of stuff. And then heard that the Beatles were coming to New Orleans in September that year, and my parents got us tickets to go see them, and took my brother and I to the show, and that's kind of was the icing on the cake. I mean, seeing them live after just having seen them on TV and listened to the records was quite an experience. The girls were going wild, just like you saw. So this thing was for real, you know. It was like right in front of you, and it looked like just so much fun. I said I couldn't imagine doing anything else, you know. So I think that really got the bug in me to be a musician, you know.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, Randy, I wanted to ask you how you guys actually got together and where the name of the band came from.
It's called the Boot Lounge. It was a bar in uptown New Orleans near the Tulane campus. And we met there, and we discussed a bunch of names that we each had. And we really nobody was agreeing with any of the names. We didn't really come up with anything we liked. And as we were leaving the place, there was a picture of a zebra right up above where we were sitting. And we were just kind of getting up and walking away at the last minute. And we looked up at the wall, and there it was, Zebra. And we said, let's just call it Zebra. That'd be awesome. And that was it.
That's interesting, because it turned out to be, I always thought, a great name, a great logo. It worked.
Yeah, it really turned out to be fortunate, you know.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how I got turned on to the band. And I grew up in Brooklyn, which you probably figured out already by the accent. And
you sound a little Brooklyn-ish.
Yeah. I first heard about the band. I grew up in a place called Gerritsen Beach in Brooklyn, and we had a big bar scene down there. It was a beachfront community, big rocker neighborhood, and it was long before you guys were signed. And our big thing was to, if we left the neighborhood, was to go out to Long Island and the clubs. And we started to hear that there was a Led Zeppelin cover band out in Long Island called Zebra, and people were just raving about it. And I had seen Zeppelin live in the Garden in '77. Grew up as a huge Zeppelin fan from probably '73. And I ventured out there with a couple of my friends. First time I went out there to see you guys, I couldn't get in because it was sold out at Hammerheads.
Hammerheads, okay. Was that the one in Levittown, or was that out in Iceland?
It was in Levittown.
Oh, okay. Right. That was really early.
Right. And then we did go out a second time and got in to see the show. And I was told it was that good. It was quite a few years after that you guys got signed to your first album. So if you could talk to us a little bit about the Long Island bar scene as a Zepp cover band and how it grew into the first record.
Well, I mean, you know, when we came up from New Orleans, the way to get gigs was to play covers. And the way to not get gigs was really playing originals. You know, you couldn't get any gigs at dances or some of the places in Louisiana. So the way we kind of went about it was we just wouldn't say, hey, this is our original, this is one of our songs. We rarely did that. We would just play the songs, and that would get us, some honest feedback, because, mixed in with all the other stuff, if somebody asked, what was that song you played, after this one, and we knew it was an original, then, and they said they really liked it, then we'd be getting, that's kind of like an honest opinion of the song without asking people for it, Yeah. And so it was a good way to kind of measure each song, and we kept playing some songs and kind of put others by the wayside during that process. So, because we had such a long time before we actually got the record deal, it helped, to kind of cull the songs. We really did a lot of a variety of songs when we first started. I mean, there was like 50 different bands we played songs by, but Zeppelin just happened to be the one that people just kept asking for more and more and more of. So I guess people, always called us a Zeppelin cover band, but we weren't really a Zeppelin tribute band, quote unquote. We always played a lot of other stuff too, but people came to see us for the Zeppelin. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, you guys did Rush covers at one point too, early on, right?
Yeah, we did. I think we did 3 Rush songs. We used to play Rolling Stones, Beatles, Robin Trower, Wishbone Ash, Montrose, Rock Candy, ZZ Top, Aerosmith, Deep Purple, even played Taking Care of Business for a while, Bachman Turner. We did a bunch of different bands. I mean, sometimes some of the stuff like will just pop up on a tape that I've got. I remember we used to play a pretty good amount of Bowie, and I had a tape and I heard us playing Cracked Actor, which was like kind of a little bit of an obscure Bowie song these days, but back then it was just really hardcore rock, and I always loved that song. We did Queen. A lot of the Moody Blues, just a lot of different stuff. But the Zeppelin was the stuff we were known for,
I think the thing with Zeppelin, at least from me going back and reminiscing of that time, was your ability to do Plant. And it was at a period of time in the later 70s where Plant's vocals weren't quite what they were in the early 70s. And you were doing that early Robert Plant stuff to such a high level that it really created a buzz all the way, like I said, I lived in a small town in Brooklyn, and the buzz went that far back. If you like Zeppelin, you got to see these guys.
Yeah, well, it definitely helped us a lot. No doubt about it.
Now, I wanted to ask you, I know you guys put the Greatest Hits album out. Was it in the late 90s there? And it did have a couple tracks that were, I guess, the original demos from around 1978. A couple songs that ended up on the first album, of course. Did you guys record a lot of songs at that point?
Well, we had a lot of demos that we had done before the first record. A couple of the songs never made it to the first album, but made it to the second album. But the songs you're talking about on the Best of Zebra, I think Riverside and Children at Heart, they were both written for the third Zebra record.
Right.
They were demo third Zebra record.
Yeah.
So they weren't.
Well, I thought there was something on the albums. Wasn't it like workshop demos from 1978?
Yeah. Those were the demo recordings of songs that eventually did make it on records. So I think there's a recording of Take Your Fingers From My Hair from the workshop. Maybe One More Chance. I can't remember. I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, I think there was a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, there was several like that, but nothing that hadn't been released at that point from the workshop stuff.
Right.
As far as the first record is concerned, we wanted to go over that a little bit with you. In my opinion, it's to this day one of the great debut records by a band. And if you could take us a little bit through the writing process and some of the standout tracks on that.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, that first record, we had 8 years to write it, When I first started writing was like around 1974, 1975. And Felix and I had had played in a band the previous couple of years called Shepherd's Bush, which was his band. He wrote all the material for that band. I hadn't been writing songs at that point, but he got me into that head. And so I started writing really stuff just for 3-piece, for bass, guitar, drums. So some of the first songs I wrote were like The Last Time, which is on the Zebra Live album, a song called Free, My Life Has Changed. Those two we put on the fourth Zebra record.
Yeah, wow.
But those were all three-piece songs, and the way that I would usually write the songs is I would just sit with a guitar and just come up with little pieces of songs, maybe with a guitar and add vocal to it, and go back and listen to all these little pieces that I had and try to fit them together like a big jigsaw puzzle, where I had 4 puzzles laying out on the floor and I had to figure out which pieces went to which puzzle. Which is kind of an odd way of doing it. A lot of songs were written that way because I'd come up with a lot of parts that might be similar or they work together. Maybe the tempos were the same or whatever. All I had to do is like put them in the same keys. And a lot of those songs were written that way. I just find the pieces that I like the best and kind of force them together in the beginning. And then kind of did the same kind of stuff throughout the writing process for the all 3 albums, But there were times when I wrote a whole song at once. One of those is "Tell Me What You Want," where I wrote. I was in New York when I wrote that, and I wrote it after we had done a gig at a club called Speaks. It was probably 8:00 in the morning. It was a long night, and I was sitting there with a couple of friends playing the guitar, and it just came to me. I wrote the verse and the chorus right there, probably in 10 minutes. Didn't have all the lyrics, but I had the melody and the chords down for for 90% of the song. So that was quick. Yeah, but the majority of songs, like "Who's Behind the Door," took a while. I was experimenting with the open tuning, open G tuning on the guitar. And so I was writing a lot of little pieces with that open G tuning, and they were all kind of ethereal kind of sounding stuff. But there were enough pieces where I started forming this song. And usually I really have to have the music and the melody first before I'd start writing lyrics or seriously attacking lyrics. And it was always the music had to come first. I mean, no matter what message I might think I have to say, nobody's going to listen to it if the music doesn't sound good. So I always wanted the music to be the standout thing. And then if I had good lyrics, I would just add to it,
Well, you mentioned a minute ago, you talked about the song "Last Time," which was a really early song that you wrote.
Yeah.
I wanted to always ask you about another song that was on the live album, "She's Waiting for You."
Right.
Where did that come from? Because that was never recorded, right?
No, that wasn't a demo. I think I wrote that when we were out in California around 1980.
Wow.
And, I kind of just remember that there was a lot of bands doing this kind of fast stuff at the time, or for some reason I was getting hit with it, and I came up with the riff for it and just put it down. I think we were doing some more demos out there. I don't know if we made a demo of that particular song, but I know I wrote it out there. We started playing it. It just never ended up on the first record.
I love that song. And like you talked about, I love the guitar in it, and especially towards the end there where it gets, real fast and great riff there. I thought it was a great song.
It's kind of furious,
Totally, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you also, Randy, how did you guys come to sign with Atlantic? What was the process with that, and how did you choose them?
We didn't choose them. They kind of chose us. We had actually gone to Atlantic in the late 70s, I think around 1979, to shop a tape that we had. We had a manager at that point, and they turned us down. They said that, and this was a demo that had, "Who's Behind the Door" on it, "Take Your Fingers from My Hair," a bunch of stuff that went on the first record. But they turned us down. They said that this music sounded dated. They said, if you came out 10 years earlier, we'd think about signing us. So, having grown up, listening to stuff from 10 years earlier, I couldn't argue with them about it. So, well, maybe that's because that's my big influence there,
Yeah.
But after that, we shopped it to another couple of labels. I think RCA turned us down, a couple of others, and we just we were doing great in the clubs, making good money, and I bought a house, at that point, and I was kind of resigned to the fact that we may never get a record deal. Program director for a radio station here on Long Island, WBAB, program director named Bob Buckman, came out, was a big fan of the band, and would come to see us and asked me to give him some of the demo tapes that we had because he would like to try to play it on the radio on their homegrown show. And they did do that. They played it on the homegrown, and then they started getting regular requests for it at the station. So Bob put the songs into regular rotation at the station, and they became just the most requested songs at the station. We didn't have a record out; nobody could buy it, so they had to listen to it, on the radio, unless they recorded it on a machine, But Bob, was kind of carrying the flag for us at that point, and he had a visit from a guy who had just starting out at Atlantic Records, a guy named Jason Flom, and Bob was having a conversation with him about some other Atlantic business, and in the conversation, he brought Zebra up and explained to Jason that we had the top 5 requested songs at the station for the last 3 months, and he said, "Oh, you mean for local bands?" And he says, "No." He says, "Period." He says, wow. He was showing him, Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor. I think All of My Love was like number 8, but Take Your Fingers from My Hair was number 2.
Wow.
Back in Black was, down there in somewhere like number 6 or whatever, but we were getting more requests than that. And so he was kind of half believing it, but, I guess he was convinced eventually, and he brought the tape back to Atlantic, and Jason had an in to see the president of Atlantic Records, and the president of Atlantic Records at that point was new. He had just become the president. His name was Doug Morris, so he wasn't there when our tape was shot. The 2 years earlier. He took a liking to it, and the story is he took it into his limo on the way home back to Long Island, because he lived in Long Island, and he had the tape with him. He hadn't listened to it, but he put it in, and he put the demo tape in, and first song in it was Who's Behind the Door, and listening to it, and it's got the long acoustic intro, and after about 30 seconds of the intro, he just ejected the tape. There's no hook here. They're not even singing yet. I'm not listening to this. But, fortunately, the radio was tuned to WBAB, and they happened to be playing that song at that point in the song. And he was very confused. I just ejected this thing, and it's still playing,
That's a great story.
Yeah. And so he put the tape back in and ejected it again, and then just finally said, it must be playing on the radio. So he listened to the whole song on the radio, and at the end, the DJ said, that's the number 1 requested song at the station. Here at the station, Who's Behind the Door, Zebra. So, of course, he called the next day, and we were signed. That was it.
WBAB was a great station. 102.3, right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have a Radio Shack signal booster attached to my stereo in the house, so I could pull that station in Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was a great station.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of great stations back in the day too. New York stations too. And they played quite a lot of different stuff than New Orleans stations did. In particular, I remember when we came to New York, one of the big differences was the amount of the Doors that got played.
Oh my
they'd
God!
hardly play the Doors at all in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Not to say the Doors weren't big, but up here it was like they were being played as much as any band. Pretty amazing.
The Doors had a tremendous following in all throughout Brooklyn. No matter what club you went to in Brooklyn, at least where I grew up, the Doors were like the Beatles in the '60s. That's how the Doors were in the '70s.
It was huge. It was huge.
I wanted to ask you about something. We're talking about the first album, and of course, one of the songs off that album is "Take Your Fingers from My Hair." Have you heard the Dream Theater version that they covered back in 2009?
Yes, I have, and I loved it. I thought it was great. We were really flattered that they did it, and they pretty much stuck to the original version. The only difference was, Petrucci at the end with the guitar solo went off and did his own thing towards the very end, but even he kind of kept it to what it was on the record. So right. I was really impressed with it, and I was flattered that they had done it.
Yeah,
I've been a big fan of the band.
Yeah, and I thought they did a great job with it too.
They sure did.
So let's move on to the second album now and talk a little bit about that. No Telling Lies was released in 1984. How did that all come about? How was the recording of that one?
No Telling Lies kind of caught me with my pants down, because we had gone out on the road promoting the first record, and I should have been writing, but instead I was just out there having a good time pretty much, and not writing as much as I should have been. So when we came off the road and all of a sudden it's time for the next record, it's like, okay, and so I had to go back into my tapes and really start putting together other songs, which I hadn't done in a couple of years. I mean, it was kind of a continuous process, and I hadn't put everything I had together at that point. But like most of the songs from the first record had been derived from these same tapes. So, I went through the tapes and came up with most of the material for the second record. I think the only song I actually wrote between the first and second record was Lullaby, and all the rest were like either songs that I had written previously. A couple of them we had already demoed, like Bears and Waiting Till the Summer's Gone, but stuff like No Telling Lies itself were pieces of songs that I had previously, and I just kind of put them together in the same method I described earlier, where I took the pieces of the songs that worked and put them together. And so it was kind of, I wish I'd have been writing more, but fortunately we had enough to make the record, and a lot of people liked it. So
yeah, well, it's that age-old story, and you mentioned before how you had 8 years to write the first album, right? And the songs were registered, and then you kind of, now you go out there, you tour, you had a lot of success on the first album, and then now it's time to do album number 2, and you're like, okay, what do I got left here? I wasn't doing what I should have done when I was out on the road.
Yeah. And when we went out on the road for the second record, that's all I did was write. I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and it paid off. I was able to put together a bunch of songs for the third record, and it I felt much more comfortable with that group of songs than I had on the No Telling Lies.
Well, as a fan, I was too.
Yeah.
I thought the third record, from cover to cover, was almost on par with the first one, and that's a tall tale, because that first record is iconic. But I thought that third record was a huge rebound, and right in line in quality from beginning to end with the first record.
Thanks. Yeah, I worked hard on it. It was kind of disappointing that they dropped us after that record. I knew at that point what I should have done, but shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I when that came out in 1986, I was like 16 years old. So that was like my introduction to Zebra. And I just love that album and always, always have. Of course, obviously the first album is a classic, but I love 3.5.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's one of my favorites too.
So then we talk about a little bit the live album that came out, called Zebra Live, which is, I've always been a big fan of this record. I think it's really well done. What were your feelings on it?
Well, it was, Atlantic had dropped us in 1987, and then they called me back around a year later to do a solo record. I had suggested to them, why don't we just do another Zebra record, but no, they just wanted to do a solo record. So I was doing the solo record, and in the middle of it, I think the band with Zebra, we were talking about doing a live record. And so I mentioned it to Jason Flom, the guy who got us signed to begin with, and he said, let's do another Atlantic. So that's what we did. We recorded it at Sundance in Bayshore in Long Island. We got 2 good nights of recording, even though it was snowing like crazy, and
really
weird kind of time of year to be doing it. But the recordings came out really good. So when it came down to the mixing, we had a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I thought it was a great album, great live album for sure.
Thanks.
So you mentioned about, that you guys got dropped in 87, the live album comes out, a few years later, you were approached to basically do a solo album that ended up coming out in 1991, right? As the China Rain album. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know if it was 91 or 93. It should have been 91 if it was released on Atlantic, but when the album was finished, when I finished the China Rain record, I got a call from Atlantic saying that they had decided to not release the record. It didn't really have as much to do with what they thought of the record as it did with what was happening in the music scene. And that was that Nirvana had pretty much changed the whole playing field.
Yeah, sure.
When they came out. And it had been about a year at that point that Nirvana had been out, and Atlantic was kind of playing catch up to the whole grunge scene. I don't even think Stone Temple Pilots was out at that point, so they were really looking for for bands like that, and they didn't even want to spend any money on 80s bands. The 80s bands were just, I guess their experience over the previous 12 months had just been that it was just money being wasted and radio stations weren't playing it. So they decided not to release the China Rain.
Yeah, that's an age-old story. So many bands experienced that around that time, right?
Yeah, and so I was able to get the masters from Atlantic, and we got it released on a label over here called Beyond Records, and there was another label over in Europe that released it, Dig It,
out of Italy.
Yeah, out of Italy, right? And we made a video for it of a song called "You're Only Lonely Today." We never did tour with the record. The band never performed live, but we had a lot of great songs on it, and I thought it was a great record. I mean, I wrote one thing that I was doing now at this point, writing with different people, and of course you can't be, sitting there doing the writing like I had been in the past. And so we were writing songs all in one session. It worked out well. I wrote with a lot of different people, got kind of a good education on how different people wrote. Even though the record never came out, as it was supposed to come out, it was a good experience for me.
We'll talk about some of the people that you did write on that album. I know, I think Jack Ponte had a bunch of co-writes on that, and I know some other guys, right?
Yeah, Jack Ponte, and I wrote with Mark Slaughter, Dana Strum, and Mark ended up producing one of the songs on the record. I wrote a couple of songs with a guy named John DiNicola, even though they didn't get put on the record. He had written the theme song to the dance movie, which my brain is with Bill Medley, Summer Camp.
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. The time of my life. He had written that. They put me together with him. And I wrote a song with Paul Stanley from Kiss that came out really great. But again, that one didn't get on the record. There were, and I'm stretching my brain, I wrote a bunch of songs with Mark Hitt from Rat Race Choir, or some of the other people. I'd have to go back through my list. My brain's kind of not allowing me to do it. But I've got a lot of demos that were never released, and so there's a lot of material there that's it's good. It still holds up till today,
Yeah. Any thoughts of ever doing anything with that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always thinking about it, but that's my problem. I think and I don't do. So procrastination is my biggest enemy,
Yeah.
But, it was a hell of a band, though. I mean, you had a young Brian Tichy in the band.
Yeah.
You had Teddy Cook, who had been with Dio for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
It was an impressive band.
Yeah. Teddy's one of the best musicians I know of, and he could do just about anything, just a natural. And when I was auditioning drummers, I auditioned a lot of drummers. I have all those auditions on tape too, on videotape. But Brian just stuck out. As soon as I heard him play, he was just like comfortable, laid back. You could tell he has confidence and he could play his ass off. And so it wasn't really a hard decision to pick him.
And that was kind of the infancy of, I'm guessing, his pro career, because this goes back 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think at that point, the only kind of professional gig he had done was with a girl named Jody Bon Jovi. I don't know if she was.
Yes.
I don't know if she was related to John.
I think it was like a cousin or distant cousin or something like that.
It was a cousin, or supposedly was a cousin.
Yeah.
Might have been, but that was the only thing that I knew that he had done. And of course, after that, he's played with just about everybody.
Yeah, no, he's become quite a name in the scene, and rightly so. He's really impressive. And I saw Teddy Cook with Dio on the Lock Up the Wolves tour. And he was a terrific bass player. It was actually a big step up from what Dio had previously as his bass player. I was really impressed with him. Could you tell us a little bit about the guitar player? Because I've never seen anything else that he's been in.
Yeah, Ronnie was a guy that was in a band down in Louisiana, Ronnie Snow. And he was, I had done a couple of demos for them down south. Just arranged some songs that they had written. He had a completely different style than I did, more of a, how could I put it? He did a lot of tapping and, kind of flash speed guitar playing, but he was melodic, and I thought that would be a good addition to the band. So I got Ronnie. He never really did anything afterwards. He went back and lived in New Orleans. He's still down there, and I've seen him a couple of times down there, but he just never did anything. And before that, he had played in some local bands and did pretty well in the Louisiana area. But that was Ronnie's career. Great guitar player though.
Well, now after that, we move ahead 17 years after the last Zebra album, and you guys finally recorded and put out four.
Yeah.
How did that all come about, and what took so long?
Just, I guess not having to do a record. Nobody was waiting for the next Zebra record. And it was I can't really say why exactly it worked like that. We didn't really, there was a period of time when you couldn't just make a record at home. But by the time we were making the fourth record, I was able to get all the equipment that we needed. And so we didn't have to go into a studio anymore. And so we did the drums down in Louisiana on some DA-88 Tascam machines, and then I converted those tapes over into a computer. I used an old Macintosh, and we did the rest of the record on that. And I recorded it in my house, and most of the overdubs. Matter of fact, I think pretty much all of the overdubs were done at my house, and mixed it at home too. So it didn't really cost us much, except our time.
Yeah.
And that probably had a lot to do with it,
Well, now the band you'd played a handful of the songs from that album for years prior in your live shows, right?
Sure. We had like 7 years for the first record and 17 for the fourth record.
Yeah.
But we had been doing a bunch of those songs live, and and then it just kind of happened. We didn't record it really quickly. It took a total of, from the time we started actually recording to finishing, it was about almost 3 years. Took quite a while, but we were really happy with it, and we pushed it when it came out, and still a lot of the songs from that record are some of the most requested songs, when we would do our live shows. So
I actually saw you guys when the album came out. You did a little promotional show over at this record store in New Jersey named Vintage Vinyl, and you guys played like a full-on electric set in the store. I think it was about a 45-minute set. It was great seeing that in a record store.
Yeah. By then we were able to do that kind of stuff. Technology was changing. And I think even then I was using a pedal instead of a guitar amp. I was using just a pedal for the sound.
Okay.
And we were going direct with a lot of stuff. So a lot of stuff had changed, and that was kind of how what drove why and how we did the records after we got dropped. Just being able to afford to do them.
Well, let's back up a little bit, because you were talking about computers and things like that. Now, I know in the early 90s, you started doing your solo shows. In around 1992, you did a solo show where it was kind of like a one-man band sort of thing, right? And you used a Macintosh computer at that point, right, to kind of tie everything together?
Yeah, I had, after Atlantic decided not to release the China Rain, I was kind of couched for 2 weeks. I was in a state of shock because I had worked a couple of years on this project. And so I got off the couch eventually, and I said, I'm going to put something together that I don't have to rely on anybody else for, that I can try to make money. And so I got on the computer, and I started programming, a bunch of songs. Some of them were originals, and some of them were covers. Mm-hmm. And I spent a year doing it. It took a long time, but it was all MIDI. I wasn't recording tracks. I was, using MIDI. And if anybody knows what MIDI is, it basically is a way to play the keyboards outside of the computer. And so, I had multiple tracks to do that. I also programmed the lights. I had a MIDI lighting show, and I also had a soundboard that was operated by MIDI. So I was able to control the changes, the levels, the mutes, everything from these, and it took a long time, obviously, so I could really play with the mix. So when I went to the gigs, I had all this equipment. I had keyboards with me and a rack full of outboard gear that was all being controlled by MIDI, and it all had to be working right. But once I got it all set up and then got the thing fine-tuned, the PA, I just had to plug my guitar in and my vocal mic, and I operated the computer with my feet and start and stop the computer, and I could just go and play with that, and it would do the mix for me. It mixed my vocal in with with everything else, and did the delays, and at that point we were at the point where you could do just about anything a person could do, you could do with MIDI, Yeah. And if you had a computer, it would repeat. So it was very cool, No,
that's wild, because I think back. I've always been a Mac guy, and I, my first computer was around 1993, and it was a Mac. And I mean, I remember and think back to those days, and you had like, 500 megabyte hard drives, and, the processors were like nowhere near what they are today, obviously. And it's wild to think that you did all that on a, an early Mac computer, or, a 1992 Mac.
It was a Mac SE,
Yeah. Well, that was like real high end at that time, right? That was like the big.
Yeah, when I bought that machine, it was like $3,500. It was expensive, but the thing was, it was the all one piece, and it had the little screen on it, a black and white. I don't think there wasn't even color then.
Right. Yes. No.
Black
you're right.
and white screen.
Yep.
And but I did all the work on there, and the funny thing was, when I first went to do the first gigs, I had this huge PA system with it was loud. And so when I started it, when I was testing this PA system with everything, I noticed that the screen on the Mac just would go crazy when the music started, because it was just it was like you would switch to a channel that didn't have any signal, on the TV. It went nuts. So while the song was going, there was no way to see where you were in the song or anything. It was pretty crazy, but it still worked. It was just affecting the screen.
So, Randy, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you got involved with the Sign Project, a Frontiers. I guess this was not meant to be a touring band, but more of a project.
Yeah, that's the way it was. We did play a couple of shows. We did a couple of shows here and over in Europe, but not a lot. But it was Mark Mangold who contacted me about doing a record with him. And I knew Mark because he was one of the guys I had written with for the China Rain that I'd forgotten to mention. Mark and I wrote a couple of songs. And Mark contacted me about doing a project with him. And originally, we were going to try to get Brad Delp to be the singer. And we just could not get through to him. For some reason, people weren't even going to let us talk to him. It was weird. And we kind of gave up on it at one point, and we contacted Terry Brock, and Terry's a great singer, and we brought Terry in, and Terry ended up writing with Mark and I most of the songs on the record. Terry knew Billy Greer from Kansas, and he contacted Billy and got Billy involved, and I knew Bobby Ronanelli, and so I asked Bobby if he wanted to do the drums, and there we had it. We were ready to roll, and at that point we were able to do the entire record at our homes. Mark had a studio at his apartment, and I had the studio here at home, and so we did it that way. And I'm proud of that record. It came out great. The songs are great.
That's a terrific record. It did well. Really, it got a lot of buzz, and I thought it was a very strong record.
Thanks. Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
I don't know if I could necessarily say that about the follow-up, but speak a little bit about that.
That was Mark's record. I didn't have the time to put into doing another record, and I don't think Terry did either. But Mark was just adamant on doing another record, so he went ahead and did it, and I got involved a little bit in it. I agreed to, sing on a song, and I think I might have written a piece of a song with him, but he had a different group of musicians doing the record, and it certainly, I just don't think that, there was as much put into that second record as there was into the first, at least from my viewpoint, the song wise, I just thought the first record had some great songs.
It did. And I think the problem with the second record is that the marketing on it was such that it led people to believe that you and Terry Brock were, like instrumental in it as much as you were in the debut. And it turns out you were not.
Right. Which, I guess you can't blame them for doing that. But, it certainly deceives people. It's kind of leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So. Yeah,
it was kind of a weird follow-up to a great debut record. And I know there were two different versions of it floating around at different, there was the Mark Mangold version, there was the Frontiers music version, two different mixes, which muddied up the waters even more than they needed to be muddied up.
Yeah, Mark wasn't getting along with Frontiers as well as you would expect or hope for, and I think he wanted the record to be a certain way, and they were arguing with him about it, and so you did have a couple of different versions of it.
His version actually was better. I have it. A friend of mine in England had sent me a copy of it, and I thought his version and his mix was better. Whatever issues they had, I can't speak to, but yeah, I would side with him on that though. That I thought his version was better.
Yeah. Well, it was something I listened to the record like a couple of times after it was done, and I just it certainly didn't have the passion of the first record.
No,
But I
it
know
didn't.
Mark really wanted to do it. I mean, maybe it was good I didn't do it because it might have taken 17 years to get it done. Who knows?
Well, we'll talk about, let's say, I mean, we talked about, the 17 years between 3.5 and 4. What's the band currently up to? I know you guys seem to play a handful of shows every year. I mean, obviously the last couple of years, the pandemic has done a number on everybody, but what's currently up with Zebra?
Well, we've been threatening to do another record for about 10 years. And,
Well, you got 7 more then, so you.
no, we've passed that point now. We're way past 17 years.
That's right.
Fourth record. Yeah, and I would have never thought that. I kind of remember guys saying back when the fourth record came out, he says, we should just do a record every year, just put it out, no matter what, we just throw some songs together, It was pretty funny. Maybe it was a good idea, but I was never about that. I wanted whatever we put out, I wanted it to be, have some level of quality to it. So,
yeah.
But that's not why it's taken so long. I think, you have kids, you have grandkids, and life gets in the way. And, like I said, nobody was like waiting for the next Zebra record. You go to shows and people want to hear the old songs, and you kind of get in a rut of that,
Yeah.
I kind of remember when Elton John said he wasn't even going to make any more records because the record company wouldn't even push the new stuff anyway. So he didn't even care to write it. But it still doesn't mean you don't want to write. So, I've been writing over the years. And, we just haven't gotten down to actually putting a record down. But in the last year, we started putting tracks down in a way, try to come up with a formula to work at different locations and not have to be in the same place to record. And it looks like it's going to work out. Guy has a nice studio set up down in Louisiana. And we have our engineer, Peter Cooperschmidt, in Long Beach. And then I have a studio out here, and we can just, remotely just fly the tracks back and forth to each other and get the stuff done. Felix lives near Peter, so he can go in there and do his stuff.
Yeah.
And so we're trying that to see if that works out.
Well, that's good news. So what's on the live front? I see you guys have a few shows for 2022 planned.
Yeah, we've got some shows coming up in March in a couple of weeks, and those were shows that were originally booked for early September. We were supposed to be doing those shows back when there was a real big rise, in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the places we were playing at they were going, can we delay this? Can we postpone it?
Yeah.
Originally, they wanted to postpone it till December, and I said no. I said I think December is going to be bad. I think it's going to be, whatever happens, it's going to be worse in December. Let's wait till March. I don't know why, but it seemed like it might be a better time. And so that's what we did. So hopefully, when it comes around in a couple of weeks, we'll be okay to play. So we've been gearing up to go on the road with it, and, doing all the getting prepared for the gigs and the sound equipment and everything. So we're ready to go.
Now you guys are doing the M3 festival this year down in Columbia, Maryland.
Yeah. I got a call to do that a couple of months ago, and that should be fun. It'll be an easy gig. We just fly in and hop on stage and do your 40 minutes, hour, whatever it is. We've done a lot of festivals in the past, done some of the cruises, and the rock cruises, and they're always fun. You get to see a lot of people you haven't seen in a long time. So.
Yeah, I've been to several of the M3s over the years, and yeah, they're always a fun time for sure. Where can fans keep up? Is it thedoor.com? Is that still the website for all news?
There's a lot of stuff on thedoor.com. The schedule's always updated at thedoor.com. Guy and I have Facebook pages. If you go to Facebook, you can really see what's going on day to day with me. And you just have to type in Randy Jackson of Zebra.
Okay.
Or Randy Jackson Zebra. It should be pretty easy to find my pages. I forget what Guy's Facebook page is, but he should be easy to find.
Yeah, that's great. We'll plug those for sure on our site once we get the interview going.
Cool.
So yeah, anything else on the horizon for you? Some more solo shows too?
I'm always doing solo shows. I've got a couple this week, a couple next week. I do a lot of private parties all around the country. I'm going to be down in Florida in a couple of weeks. Doing something for the Joe Namath golf tournament. They've hired me to play at a party that they're having down there for that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm a big football fan, so
Oh, cool.
I'm
Nice.
sure I'll
That's-
meet some
that's
people.
cool.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. And I'm doing some shows in Louisiana. We're just keep trying to fill in the schedule. I mean, since the pandemic, we haven't played very much at all, but it's starting to kind of pick up a little bit. And I've been vaccinated. Everybody's gotten their vaccinations, and I think after this last COVID surge, seeing how it went, we're a little more confident that we can go out and pretty safely play without being worried about it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more optimism, like you said. I mean, it seems to be kind of starting to subside a little bit. So hopefully, everybody keep their fingers crossed and everybody can get back to playing shows again. I last saw you guys in, I think it was 2018 in New Jersey.
Where was that?
New Jersey at the Debonair Music Hall in Teaneck.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think that was the last
So
time I saw you guys
that was
play.
that was I think the last gig we played before the pandemic was maybe in 2019. Might have been in 2019. No, I take that back. We did play in 2020. We did a show in January or February of 2020.
Right before everything kind of went crazy.
Just right before, yep.
It's tough now. You're trying to remember the years anymore, right? It's like the last 2 years didn't exist.
Yeah, that's right. There's a void, and it's definitely been strange,
Randy, it's been a great conversation, and Tom and I really appreciate this. And anything you wanted to say, Tom?
No, I had a great time doing this, and I was glad you gave us your time, Randy. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. I could also tell people if they wanted to, they could get on the Zebra email list. If you want to record.
How do you do that? Where?
If you want to join the Zebra email list, and we don't bombard you with email, by the way, but you can go to our website, thedoor.com, and there's a place there where a button you can click to join the email list, and it's going to ask you to confirm that it's you, so you might get an email back to confirm that you want to be on the list. And but we'll send out an email with our schedule, and usually the most current dates are going to be right in the subject, so you don't even have to open it up if you just want to see what's going on that week.
Okay, great. Well, everybody, Randy Jackson from Zebra, make sure you join the mailing list on thedoor.com, and appreciate it, Randy. Thank you for the talk tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys. I had a good time.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I've been wasting my time. I am losing my mind. My head's on the floor. Forevermore, I have given you all that I have. With the slam of the door.